All right, well, welcome everybody. This is Barney Quincy coming to you live from Ontario, Canada on a beautiful fall day. And we're here again for another weekly coaching call. Depending if you're joining on with us live or if you're watching this replay, depending on where you're watching this and or listening, I just want to let you know that a recent quick little update. First of all of these coaching calls were originally reserved for just our VIPs, but it's been voted and agreed upon that we wanted to open up these coaching calls to basically let everybody get access to it because there's such amazing information that's on these calls. And what we've done now for our VIPs is they actually are going to be receiving mini monthly master classes or monthly mini master classes on a specific topic. So that's coming out in a few weeks. And by the way, if you're not a VIP, you can still actually join in and just pay for those mini master classes. So that if you're not going to miss out on anything. So without further ado, we have a presenter who's an animal wellness expert coming and joining with us live here today. Her name is Sally Morgan. She's a new presenter to us to the Animal Wellness Summit, and for the first time this year in 2018, and she's actually doing 2 presentations. So what we're going to be doing is just kind of digging in a little bit, learning more about Sally and her background, her history, and all the other cool things. As I'm looking at her topics and the 3 key learning points on my other monitor here, and I'm really interested in what you have to share, Sally, because I come from the human holistic health field in probably about 15 years of coaching, and I owned 2 gyms before. I sold them. Now I just do a little bit of private coaching, and I really have a passion for that. And I've been always continually interested in learning from you guys to see the parallels that there is in animal and human health, and how just the holistic principles are, for the most part, the same. So thank you for being with us and joining in here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I'm here with my dog, Tristan. He's a corgi. You can see part of him. So I'm happy to join you and so happy to be a part of the Wellness Summit.
Awesome. So where are you calling in from today here?
I'm located in Western Massachusetts in the lovely Pioneer Valley.
Cool. Well, it looks like you have a nice landscape back there with all the trees. It looks pretty nice.
Yes, I have 8 acres of wildlife around me, which when I first moved in made me quite happy because I had beavers in my backyard, like 300 feet from my house. And when I was in high school, I had the great pleasure of working with one of the world's foremost beaver experts. And so to move here and have beavers in my yard was just a miracle.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because it's just when you can be in the natural elements as much as possible. The majority of people, I think, can agree that it keeps us as human beings much more grounded and connected to the earth and our animals. So why don't you give us a brief summary, because I don't know that much about you. I know the basics and the gist of it, and I just learned that Dr. Judy Morgan is your sister. I didn't know that.
That's right. We look alike. People tell us that.
Well, now I can see that, but I didn't make the connection before. And I wondered when I saw her name and then your name, I'm like, I wonder if you guys are related. And then I just learned something new. So just tell us briefly about your background, your history, and what brought you to where you are today, because that's going to be a great kind of stepping stone into talking about your topics, because connecting with animals and craniosacral therapy for animals are something that I know that is going to be of interest to a lot of people.
Right. Well, I have a book that details my journey. It's Dances of the Heart, Connecting with Animals. And it talks about my life with animals, which began with my mother and my sister for that matter as well. She was a great lover of animals, my mom. She came from a farm, and that, I think, instilled in my sister and me a great love of animals. And so when I first graduated from college and didn't have a horse anymore and lived in an apartment without dogs being allowed or cats, I ended up with rabbits. And I had a chestnut thoroughbred mare off the track, an Arabian, untrained. I had really difficult horses to start with, and I just really wanted to have that connection with them. But the training methods available to me and the people to help me were very limited. And so when I got my rabbits, I really wanted to relate to them in the same way you would with a dog. And so I discovered the limitless potential of bunnies. They can do everything a dog can do. They can sit, they can come, they can down, they can learn their names. And you can find out lots of things about their lives just by being with them. And that started me on a journey of really looking into deeper connections with animals than what we typically think. Because up until that point, the only book about rabbits was Raising Rabbits the Modern Way, which on the last page was a picture of rabbit legs that you could have for dinner, which was not anything like I wanted to do with my bunnies. And so from the bunnies, I went on in my life and became an English teacher and got a horse and my first corgi. And at some point I got injured when I was riding, and I went to a physical therapist who was doing craniosacral therapy. And at that point I had become a Tellington T-Touch practitioner. Linda Tellington is a world-renowned animal expert, and it's really part of a system of looking at animals as sentient beings and really great partners in our lives, and it's a way of training and helping with health and behavior. And so when I got injured, the person I went to said to me, you know, it seems like the work you're talking about and the work I'm doing, at that point it was T-Touch, we're quite related, and maybe you should become a physical therapist and do what we do. And in fact, that's exactly what I did. I went to physical therapy school. I took Craniosacral 1 with the Upledger Institute and completed their entire curriculum. I've had probably 45 classes with them. And then I immediately on day one, similar to Linda Tellington and her Feldenkrais class saying, oh my gosh, we have to apply this to animals. I knew on day one that we needed craniosacral therapy for horses because we are sitting on their central nervous system when we ride them, and we are connected to the skull bones through the halters and the bridles, and these are such delicate systems, and the way that humans interact with horses is really putting a lot of misalignment and problems into the horse's skull and the function of the horse's skull bones, and that creates behavior problems. And so craniosacral therapy and Tellington T-Touch just really were so interrelated, and the two modalities married perfectly. And from the early 90s, I've gone on to develop that work for small animals and horses and rabbits and dogs and cats, and have developed my work as a holistic physical therapist for animals as well, primarily focusing on manual therapy modalities, including lymphatic drainage and myofascial release and Reiki and many other things. And including emotion code work, which I also do with the animals. And then I also, along the way, became really interested in the relationship between behavior and physical pain in the body. And I believe that 99.999% of all behavior problems come from a physical dysfunction in the body. And that if we can address that, then we can give our animals the kinds of lives that we all want them to have and love them and appreciate them in a new way if we can see their behavior as an expression of what they're trying to tell us is going on in their body.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're going to keep going there, but that's quite the background and intro. Really cool, in regards to the breadth of your experience. And how long have you been doing? You already mentioned this. Been doing this.
I've been doing craniosacral work with animals since 1991, and I've been a Tellington T-Touch practitioner from about 1982. And then all the other work I've added along the way. And I just, looking at the intelligence of rabbits really shifted me in how I look at animals I'm typically interacting with, like horses and dogs, who, especially my horses, there's so much intelligence in horses that I think is underappreciated. And again, the way that we have evolved to work with them has come out of them as being draft animals and animals that do work, and that we were treating like cars, and to look at an animal as a partner that you want to have a relationship with, especially with horses, is a big jump. I mean, dogs have done jobs for us with hunting and things, but lots of dogs have been companions. But to look at horses in a new way, I think is a pretty big shift that's happening currently.
That's pretty neat. So 1982, that's longer. That's 36 years. 30. I was born in 83, so I put dates my age there. Now you mentioned Feldenkrais. Were you referring to the same Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais?
Yes, Moshe. Linda Tellington had started her career with a very top-notch horse training facility and rider training facility in California, and then a variety of things occurred that led her to being interested in sort of alternative modalities in the early 70s. And she ended up studying with Moshe and went through the entire training with him. And the idea of finding a non-habitual way to put movement into the body was part of the initial philosophy of the Tellington T-Touch work that I do.
Yeah, that's neat because my experience has been with Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais with the human body is just that movement through awareness. And I use it still with my clients today because it works so incredibly well. And my brief description, maybe you can fill in the blanks here, but my brief description is that it just, to re-experience the ways that our body can move at slower, usually a slower pace to get more engagement and interaction from the nervous system that you don't have to be like, so in the exercise industry, there's a lot of fast movements, quick movements, hard movements, and to relearn the coding that's in our nervous system to remember the way that our body is meant to function and that the way that we live our life on a daily basis is fast paced, or I can say generally, or for everybody, paint everybody with the same broad stroke, but that the majority of North Americans have a fairly fast-paced life, and then that builds up into tension in the body, and so it's amazing it's been amazing for my clients. So how have you integrated that with your physical therapy work? I guess because I'm not super familiar with exactly the Tellington T-Touch, but can you expand a bit more on that? Perhaps with the work that you do with your animals?
Well, I'm not a Feldenkrais practitioner. I've taken plenty of Feldenkrais courses along the way in my training. One of the interesting things is that if you are a Feldenkrais practitioner and it's time for you to renew your license and take continuing ed, Tellington T-Touch is one of the things that you are permitted to do because it came out of Feldenkrais work. So I have given workshops at plenty of Feldenkrais workshops, and thereby taken quite a few. But one of the intriguing things I think that Linda has brought from that work, and that translates into all the work I do with animals, is looking at the relationship between the person's body and the animal's body. No matter you're sitting on a horse or walking a dog, the tension patterns in your body and the way that you move has a profound effect on the animal that you're with. And one of the early things I noted back in the early 90s was I had cat and lady clients coming to me, and all of them had the same exact physical problems. And I was like, isn't that funny? People think cats are so independent and that they don't really interact. And it's completely not true. They're super tuned into their people. And so I was getting these cats come limping in for their first visit because hardly anyone does any kind of therapy with cats. And they would have tremendous trouble in their right shoulder, and so did the person. And I think, with the person hunched over their desk using their right arm a lot, with the cat sitting by them, the cat adapted that same kind of pattern of posture. And so there's a huge correlation between how we are in our bodies and how we are with our animals in their bodies. And that really even goes down to walking with your dog. One of the things I like to educate people about is the HeartMath Institute and this idea of heart coherence, which is when your body's rhythms are in synchrony with the animal that you are with. And part of achieving that is being relaxed enough in your body so that you're taking deep, full breaths, using your stomach when you breathe. And that slows and quiets all the systems in your body and allows you to come to a place of peace where you can be heard by your animal in a new way. And it makes a huge difference in your ability to connect with them and in the behavior and training of a horse.
Yeah, I was just taking some notes here, which is good. So thank you for that expansion, because I think that, I ask out of interest for myself, but also for everybody, for those of you tuning in live and listening to this as a replay, is that it's good to go through, and even revisiting the basics is really important. Speaking of which, if you were to give a description of what is holistic physical therapy, how would you best describe it?
One of the things about holistic physical therapy that I think makes it uniquely different from like healthy or alternative physical therapy is that the idea of holism brings in all of these four elements: the physical healing, the mental wellness, the emotional well-being, and the spiritual health. And really, it's kind of novel to look at those four spheres in particular for animals, but of course, it relates to them no matter they're reptiles or amphibians or mammals or fish. And it certainly applies to people as well. So we look at health in the physical realm and the structure of the body. Mental wellness: is the animal anxious or calm? Are they able to relax? Are they able to modulate between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system to find balance? We look for emotional well-being. Often I see animals who are grieving for the loss of another animal member of the household. So that's an aspect of holistic physical therapy, as well as the spiritual health. And I have helped plenty of animals cross the Rainbow Bridge. And I am a huge proponent of hospice care for pets. I have been working with a horse for a week during his dying process and seen really a spiritual transition for him from his physical life to his life across the Rainbow Bridge. And it's really profound when you respect animals in a way that allows you to see all aspects of them, not just, my dog is peeing on the kitchen floor. There are so many things that go into that, and as you learned from my sister, a lot of that is the physical well-being of what they're eating, but there are all these other aspects of an animal that goes into their health, and that's partially what is addressed with holistic physical therapy. And I offer a lot of unique modalities and in a unique combination. I do a lot of vibrational healing work with tuning forks, and that addresses some of the outer layers of the body as well, to bring about a state of real whole wellness.
Yeah, that's cool. That was my acronym that I use for my clients is PEMS, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual elements. I literally just had a session today with one of my clients who's been off for the summer and came back. I thought, I'm going to be done with coaching. I sold the gyms, but what I keep coming back to is just that I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm really good at what I do. I'm passionate about it. I'm inspired to do it. And my client reaffirmed that because he said, I just want to tell you like how much you've changed my life. It's not just my physical that I feel better, but then he's been off, and he's like his emotions and the mental state's been off. And I said, well, have you found the correlation of your lack of exercise over the summer and how much that's affected your mindset and your mood and your emotions and stuff? And he's like, yeah, I kind of thought about that, but I didn't think it actually had that big of an effect. So I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Well, it's funny mention that because I was driving by some horses I used to work with today, and their person is away for like a year. And they have a caretaker there, but she's not allowed to ride them, and she's busy and doesn't interact with them. And so these two horses are in this like 1 acre field. And I thought, why do I feel sad about that? And I had to really look at it to realize that, like us, animals need mental stimulation for their well-being. And, I imagine that when I took these 2-hour trail rides with my horse, that he had something to think about that night, and different things that he had eaten along the way, and conversations he had with the other horses on our journey. And that for these two horses, thank God they have each other, but how much variety is in that 1 acre of land that they're on for their mental stimulation. And one's quite a bit older and not so healthy, so he can't really play. But it is really important. Exercise is critical for animals as well as people, and that includes physical and mental exercise.
Agreed. You're talking to an exercise guy, so I get it. But good to reinforce that, from the animal side too. We found that with our dog, Lucy, who unfortunately is no longer with us. She's, as as Brent Atwater said, she's transitioned. Long story short, she's not with us anymore, and I would take her for walks. And then in the wintertime, she's a little Shih Tzu crossed with something else. I can't remember what it was. And then in the wintertime, we wouldn't take her out as much because we live in Ontario. We did get her like little booties for her feet when we lived in the small little town, but now we're in the country and the snow is like usually just whatever. And then in the wintertime, she was drastically different in her demeanor, in her kind of mood, in her like behavior. And the summertime should be running around, playing outside. And I mean, it seems so logical and simple, but I think that it's just good to point out those little basics, right?
Well, and you can use, for people, because New England is not that different in the winter, we use elements of the Tellington T-Touch confidence course, which we also call the Playground for Higher Learning, to work with dogs inside in the winter. And I do dog dancing, and I also encourage people to do trick training with their dogs just to keep them mentally stimulated in the winter. It's so much fun to do with them, and they get so excited when you get your props out to do the activities, and it changes your connection with them. It helps you relate to them in a new way. It's really, I consider the winter a great opportunity to find new aspects of my dog that in the summer, yes, I love my dog walks. They're some of the best parts of my day. And certainly in the winter, I was inspired by a book a long time ago called Riding Through Winter that encouraged you to, it was by a dressage instructor, but to look at your horse's hoof prints in the snow, to be able to see, you know, is your shoulder in good or not? You know, what, are you walking on 4 tracks or 3 or 1? Well, you wouldn't be on 1 or your horse would be falling down, but you know, you were able to learn a lot. And one of the things in my work with biomechanics and horses and riders is walking. You can learn so much about how the horse moves walking, which is one of the parts of what we do with T-Touch, is using a labyrinth where you walk around 90-degree corners, but in a particular way, asking the animal to rebalance, and being able to do activities like that with your dogs in the winter and with your horses. I mean, you can build a labyrinth out of snow if you have snow in the winter, and it really changes things. And one of the things that really propelled me into what I do now was one winter when I was in a big change in my life, and I had left teaching, and I was a professional horse trainer for several years. And where I lived, it's snowy. Not all of my clients had an indoor ring. And I said, I need you to sign a contract because I have to come every week or I will financially be ruined. And they said, oh, sure. And I said, you know, that means we'll do something inside or in the barn or with the horse if we can't ride. And they said, fine, no problem. Well, I don't think any of my ladies rode more than once or twice that entire winter. It was the worst winter we'd ever had. And I did body work on the people. I did body work on the horses. We looked at saddle fit. We did a lot of work just walking in the aisle, which may have only been 12 feet long, and in and out of stalls. And one of my clients called me from a horse show in like late March, early April. She'd been on her horse maybe for 2 weeks. She won an open jumper class with a 14 3-hand Morgan, who she could barely ride a year before. But the change was from the body work, and that's when I really saw the importance of offering this kind of work for my clients and their animals, because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And expanding on that earlier part about the holistic physical therapy, we talked about it a little bit, but what is the best description that you can give for people about craniosacral therapy for pets and horses, and how can it really help their pet or horse? So you kind of alluded to a little bit, but maybe.
All right. Well, it's a hands-on body work technique, and you still, no matter it's a horse or a rabbit, you're using the weight of a nickel in your fingers. It's very light work. It's like a 2 or a 3 in the pressure that we use in Tellington T-Touch work, if people are familiar with that. And it's a gentle hands-on method to evaluate and treat aspects of the central nervous system, and that includes the craniosacral system, which is the spinal cord, the membranes in the brain, the bones in the head, the sacrum and the spinal cord and the spinal column. And so you're really addressing the central nervous system. And because you are working with the central nervous system, you have the possibility of making profound changes throughout the entire body. And in one session, as with T-Touch, you can often see changes that are enduring for a very long time. And I think with horses, as I mentioned, because we're riding them and pulling on their heads all the time, this is really important work. And it's really made a big difference for a lot of my horse clients, horses with Lyme disease and horses with EPM who have been really struggling, have done great with craniosacral therapy. And then with dogs, I've worked with a lot of dogs with Lyme disease, senior dogs with lameness problems, and cats with spinal cord problems, cats after a stroke. I've had quite a few cat clients post-stroke, interestingly. But because the cranial work really directly affects the nervous system, it can work with imbalances that may be in the sensory system too, because you're working on the cranial nerves in the head, and that can also change the animal's experience of the world. And you engage the body's self-healing mechanisms. All of the work I do engages the body ability to heal. So I really consider myself a facilitator, not a healer, because it's really the animal that is doing the work, and it's really just a privilege to witness the changes that come about from this kind of body work.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions, was just basically how do the animals respond, and also, you know, how important is it to their healing process? And you answered it right there, which was just that you're facilitating it, that our bodies, whether it's an animal or a human being, we've been given through our innate intelligence or God created, or however we want to look at it, our bodies are designed to be able to stay in homeostasis and balance. But then there is many times like this work for physical therapy, massage therapy, craniosacral therapy, different physical modalities that help to support the body to do its job, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and people often ask, what's the difference between cranial work and massage? Because many massage therapists do cranial work. Massage works on the muscles, and sometimes the effects are useful, but not particularly long-lasting necessarily. And with craniosacral therapy, because we are working on the central nervous system, you're going to see a profound, long-lasting change after a session. And the way a session runs is we put our hands on the animal and we do a technique called arcing, where you assess the body through the rhythms that you're feeling, kind of like measuring acupuncture meridians, and you find the area of primary restriction, and then you are able to treat that area, treat what we call facilitated segments, which are spinal bone issues that might be related to it, and then make changes that allow the animal to continue to heal. I always tell people after a treatment, because I do work on humans too, if they can rest for an hour, or if their animal can rest for an hour, it's like getting 2 sessions for the price of 1, because they go into a place of deep healing even after the session, and it can make huge changes for them.
Yeah, that, and I know I've had it done before. It's been a long time since I've had some craniosacral therapy, but I think that I'll just share my experience, and I'm going to presume that a lot of other people have had this experience. If you've had it done, if you haven't, then you don't know. You have to go get some work done. But I remember thinking in my brain, I'm thinking the massage therapy, I can feel it, it's working the muscles, you know, I can kind of, oh yeah, I got that knot there. The craniosacral therapy was much more of an energetic experience. And I remember thinking, I'm like, this is way before I had started coaching professionally. I think I was in my late teenage years. I'm like, what the heck is going, like, I'm like, I could feel shifts taking place, but I didn't know how to interpret it. And part of me was thinking, well, there's not really a whole lot happening here. So what is it actually doing? But now that I know what I know now, and if I knew that then, I think my level of appreciation would be a lot higher, because very little happens in the human body without the firing of the nervous system. And if that's out of balance, then there's a lot that can be out of balance.
One of the things we say in craniosacral therapy is that it flies under the body's radar, because the touch is so light that the body's defense mechanisms are not engaged. You don't tense up against it. So the work can go on a very deep level, even spiritually and emotionally and beyond the physical on a deep level, because the touch is so light and it doesn't engage any kind of resistance. And so the work is profound. And a lot of people feel a sense of sleepiness during a session. One of the great stories is one Dr. Upledger used to tell about his first experience with it. He was an osteopath, but he wasn't trained in any of the traditional hands-on techniques that osteopaths used to do. And so he went to a class, and he was paired. He was a very big, burly man from Detroit, really a tough guy. And he was paired with like a 90-year-old nun. And he had a lot of trauma in his life, and this tiny little lady slid her hand under his sacrum and started to release it. And he was just awash with emotion and anger and happiness and sorrow. And then he could feel his whole spinal cord shifting on a subtle way and his whole postural alignment changing. And in his case, you know, because he was a tense, angry person at that point, he could feel changes in his jaw and his face and his head. And then he was filled with this profound sense of peace during this lady's little 15-minute session with just touching his sacrum. So that's what inspired him to popularize this work and research it. And, you know, it's been proven super useful for people with learning disabilities. And we've done a lot of the work with babies because he really advocated that if every child got this work when they were born, we could really wipe out a lot of problems that kids have by just sort of calming down all the tensions in the nervous system at birth, releasing some of that trauma. You can go on to have a much more healthy life. And so I've had the pleasure of working with a litter of kittens and a litter of puppies and a couple of new foals, and especially with the horses where there's not so much room for a big horse to come into the world. It's made a big difference.
Yeah, now you're inspiring me to go find another local practitioner again to get that work done. So I have a question, a couple more questions actually, but by the way, this is really good. This is awesome to give, you know, a lot of great teaching, and it's not complicated. It's actually, you know, it's not that I expected it to be complicated, but sometimes certain topics can be like there's a lot to take in and a lot to process, but it's making a lot of sense. So Mercedes was just asking here, as you've been sharing, how often should a dog get this therapy or craniosacral therapy?
It depends on what you're seeing the animal for. I have a horse right now that I'm seeing weekly for a little while because he had a frank separation in his SI joint where his sacrum meets his ilium. And that was diagnosed at Tufts, the veterinary university near us. And he had a year off. And he has a lot of inflammation there, and of course, scar tissue, which is part of the healing process. So I'll be seeing him weekly for a while, and then possibly every other week, and then once every 3 weeks, and then monthly. I'm also doing veterinary orthopedic manipulation, which is like chiropractic work with him. So it really depends on the animal. If I'm seeing a dog that's coming out of Lyme disease, I might see him every 10 days just because there's so much nervous input going on combating the disease that I don't want to add too much to that. So it really depends on the animal. Every animal is an individual, and they all have a unique way of healing, and a lot of it depends on the age. In cranial work, we look at the body as layers of an onion. And you have your first trauma on that layer of an onion when you're born, and then you have good things happen to you, like getting married or falling in love, and then you have bad things happen, like, you know, not being popular in high school, or not getting the job, or getting a divorce, or someone dying, and those things build up in the body until you're middle-aged, quote unquote, and then you have symptoms which are related to all of those traumas that have happened to you emotionally or physically. And the same is true for our animals. And that was one reason I wanted to add emotion code work to what I do, to be able to unlock some of the trapped emotions in the animals that go back to before the person may have had them. Like a lot of the animals now are rescues, and some of them have traumatic pasts. And being able to unlock that prior trauma helps with the animal's healing at this point. And so, you know, using a combination of things, we try to work with the person's budget and what the animal needs. And sometimes I see animals for only 2 sessions, and they do great after that. So it really is something, Mercedes, that depends on every animal.
Yeah, I think that perfectly answered it. So thank you for that. And Mercedes, hopefully that helps. Just let us know in the chat. And see, this is just as a quick little reminder, guys, for those of you who are VIPs to join in live, and everybody else. I know we're just getting started with releasing this to everybody in the public. It's been a little bit chaotic for us. We're just getting ready for the Wild Success Summit next week at the time of this recording, and then our second annual Wellness Summit's coming up. So we're going to be letting you guys know more in advance, because I really I know people are going to love this, Sally. So thank you. So you mentioned, I want to get to this in a second about the emotion code, but the other part was about the T-touch, the talented T-touch. Now, I know that you might have already covered it, but did you already cover it in describing the gist of what it is, and if not, could you do that now?
Wellington T-touch consists of 4 modalities, as it were. So you've got the body work that you do. There are circular T-touches, which are the basis of T-touch work. And then we have the confidence course, which is also called the Playground for Higher Learning, which is a sort of ground exercise that we do with every animal, even bunnies and kitties. Less with kitties, depending on how they are. But I have a cat right now who's doing pretty well doing the labyrinth in my house with just tape on the floor, so you can use anything. And then we also have a lot of specialized equipment that Linda has developed to work with the animals. That includes wraps to give them a sense of body awareness and proprioception, and our particular harness that we use for dogs, which is just a wonder to help dogs stop pulling. Next year I may do a talk about harnesses because that's something I've become quite expert in. And then with horses, we have a couple of bridles that don't have bits, and then we have some other equipment we use with horses. One of them is a balance rein, where you have something around your horse's neck to shift his balance and ask him to be in balance when he stops, because so often horses don't stop because they're out of balance and they're falling forward. So we have a whole variety of equipment we use, and then we also have the 4th aspect of T-touch, which is intention. And that is, in Linda's terms, not to get well or be better, but to remember your potential for perfection. Because if something's dying or super fearful that they might die, or if they have tremendous trauma, and certainly in humans we see this, remembering the potential for perfection is quite a different take on it. And it allows the animal or the person to still make their choice and have their volition to, get well or not get well, but to remember that potential for perfection. So the intention is a big part of T-touch work. And then what I so often do is, and this gets back to your question, Mercedes, I often use Tellington T-touch work, which is easy to learn but hard to do really well, as homework between the sessions that I do with animals. So for instance, I have a dog now I'm working with who is post ACL surgery, not really weight bearing well on the side where the surgery was, even now big like German Shepherd mix. And so we're doing some T-touch exercises and T-touch body work with the dog to help her shift her weight back over to the other side so that she is weight bearing evenly, so she does not end up with another ACL surgery. So I often use T-touch as what I call homework for the other work I do, and it is an amazing modality in its own. And in fact, when I made I have a deck of 52 animal connection cards, which are ways that you can connect with your animals, no matter what kind they are, to enhance your connection with them. And the very first card in the deck is what we call the Tellington T-touch Heart Hug, because it's so powerful to get you in your body and to connect with your animal. And I feel like everyone should do a heart hug before they walk into the barn to see their horse, no matter you're at a stable or at your house. And the same when you come home from work and you're seeing your dog. Maybe you had a very bad day at work. You don't want to bring your bad self home to your pets. You want to bring your best self. So the heart hug is a big part of that. And I teach every yoga class I teach and every animal client I have, I teach them how to do the heart hug.
Okay, so speaking of which, why don't you tell us about it? Can you explain to us briefly about the heart hug?
Sure. Tristan, stay here. So you imagine the face of a clock on your chest over your heart. I hope you can see this. And then you cross your hands over your heart. And you're going to connect through your clothes to the skin very lightly. And then you're going to slide your hands around in a circle there. And you're going to make a circle and a quarter. So if the 6 is down here on the clock, and the 9's over here, you're going to go all the way around the clock and back to the 9. So you take a breath in, you make that connection, you go around the clock and back to the 9. And then you release. And you can do that either direction. You don't want to be sliding over your clothes like this. You want to connect through your clothes so that you're really pushing the skin in a circle and a quarter. And that's the heart hug. And you can do it on your dog. You just put your hand on his chest and make a circle and a quarter. Oh, he's leaning on me. I can't move my hand very well. Sorry, Tristan. And you can, it's an easy corgi. And you can do that on your horse, or you can use a couple of fingers and do it on your cat or your bunny. But the heart hug really gets you in your body, and it helps you be your best self when you're going to be with your animals. And I think it's an important thing for every pet owner and pet lover to do. And one of the things that I also encouraged for using the heart hug is to use it when so many of us see animals in the road that have been damaged, and we don't know what to do, and you're on the highway and you can't pull over, and it's so upsetting. So either pulling over yourself, or when you get home, just putting your hands on your heart and doing a little heart hug saying, you know, bless this spirit, keep it safe in its next life, protect those who use it for food, can really bring some peace. And I found occasionally when I do this with an animal that's been really just traumatically injured and killed, that I have to do 2 or 3 of them before I can get the breath back in my own body. And I think that really does help release their spirit. So it really does give us something to do. And that happens, you know, also when you're looking on Facebook and you see, you know, terrible stories of animal abuse that you don't really want to see. A heart hug can help release that negative energy.
That's really cool. I'm down with that. That's always good. I'm really consider myself to be tuned in. I think that I know that we're all tuned in, whether we decide to say God or to the universe or to our source. But I feel that when we have that intention and we're grounded in our body, our day-to-day interactions are definitely enhanced. So I really appreciate that. And just to clarify, your doesn't matter how you put your hands. I know it's more the intention.
You want to just cross them over your heart.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. Do what feels good to you. In Chinese medicine, the counterclockwise is weakening or taking the energy away, and going to the other direction is strengthening. So just notice which way you're going, and you know, it might not be the same every day. And there's no right or wrong with it, but just notice. And some of it might just depend on your own shoulder restrictions, which way feels more comfortable for you. But boy, when I start that circle and go up towards the 12, I can feel my whole spine aligning behind my hands. It's just such an amazing, powerful tool to have the heart hug.
Cool. And you do that, you said a quarter. You said a quarter, you mean?
You want to do a circle and a quarter. You go all the way around the clock and then back up to the 9.
Oh, okay.
So it's a circle and a quarter.
Okay, so you do a circle and then a quarter.
Yeah, all the way around to the 9, and then release.
Okay, cool. So Mercedes was saying thank you. That was very helpful. And she would just like to know, her dog gets chiropractic every 6 weeks. To keep her nervous system healthy, and how is craniosacral therapy different or more beneficial than chiropractic treatment, if it is? I'm curious on your thoughts on this.
It's a good question. My clients ask me this all the time. Part of it is the chiropractic work works really just on the bony system. So you've got massage therapy and myofascial work, which works on the fascia and the muscular system. You've got chiropractic, which works on the bony system, and craniosacral works on the central nervous system. So I find that I'm able to get better adjustments that hold longer if I use the chiropractic in the middle of a craniosacral session, because the body is readjusting and realigning during the cranial session. And then we get to a point where there's just a few, like I have to use fewer chiropractic connections after a cranial session or during a cranial session, because a lot of things will smooth out as they go along. I mean, I have a dog now I'm working with who's just started working in a cart because he's got a degenerative disease in his hind end, and he's getting a little roach back like right here. And the chiropractic work, if I just did that right away without doing the soft tissue work ahead of that, wouldn't really hold. You know, it would bounce back because those muscles are so tight. So I've got to do that work on the nerves to release that tough tissue so that the chiropractic work will hold and get the most benefit. And I find that they don't need to come as often for chiropractic adjustments when it's part of a craniosacral session as well. And a lot of animals that are not always happy about their chiropractic sessions do a lot better if they get some soft tissue work, whether it be T-touch or cranial work or myofascial work along with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. If I was to answer it, my perspective would be not as an expert and experienced as you are, but I go to chiropractic, get my adjustments, and I know that it'll hold the adjustment longer. So did I hear you correctly that you're suggesting that an adjustment, the chiropractic adjustment, happens during the middle of a craniosacral therapy?
Yeah, if a session is like an hour, I usually do the adjustment at like 45 minutes into the session, because then I have time to smooth over the nervous system again. I mean, I've been working with a very light touch and the animal's really relaxed. And when I go in there with the chiropractic tool, it's pretty invasive. And so I want to be able to smooth over that nervous system again. And, you know, the animal will often take a deep breath and relax, because suddenly they can like arch their back and really feel differently than they had when they came in.
Very neat. Very neat. It's very cool. So the emotion code, can you just recap that again? I was just looking at my notes up here. Can you just recap that again on that, and then how the animal responders work? Because I mean, we've talked about craniosacral therapy, talked about the T-touch, and then the emotion code. Can you just summarize that?
This is a method developed by a chiropractor whose last name is Nelson, and it is a way of releasing trapped emotions in the body. And he teaches this work for humans. And trapped emotions can be any number of things. Basically, we use a system of applied kinesiology or muscle testing to see which emotions are trapped in the body related to a specific question. So I might ask an animal, what trapped emotion do you need to release to get along with the other dog in your house better? And that's actually not a good question. I would ask something more specific, like to be calm when you're both eating near each other would be a more specific question. So you have a little chart that you use, and you go through. I muscle test this way on myself. I do this remotely. So I can say to the animal, you know, is this emotion you need to release in column A or B? And he'll tell me, and then which line it's on, and then which one of the specific emotions in this grid that's been developed. And then to release it, you run really powerful magnets over the governing meridian. So if I'm doing it remotely, I would do that on myself, and that releases the emotion completely for the animal. And I've had huge success with this work. I mean, I have tended to be a little skeptical about applied kinesiology for a lot of reasons, but the more I do it and the more I see results, the more I am convinced that it is really profound. And I mean, there are animals that people send me just a photograph of them, and they show me a before and after picture sometimes, and just the change in the whole demeanor and their outward energy is different when they have released these trapped emotions. So I do that long distance, and I've done some work with what we call a heart wall, which is a bunch of trapped emotions that are around your heart that interfere with your ability to connect with loved ones and the world in general. And with a couple of horses, I've had some really amazing results where I did the session at a different time than I was telling the person, and they went out to see their horse, and I had done it earlier in the day, and the horse was like pawing at the door to get to the woman and just like put his head against her chest and just laid there connecting with her in a way that he had never done before. She'd gone in the stall and his ears were pinned, and he didn't want to do anything with anyone because he had been abusively trained in a foreign country and came here, and he just didn't want to connect with humans. And her assuring him that he would be with her forever, and having had him for 2 or 3 years when I met them, was not enough. And we had to break down those emotions in the heart wall to allow him to feel her love. And that made a huge difference. He's a much safer horse now, and they have so much more fun together.
Yeah, that's really neat. And so you said this chiropractor that developed this teaches it for humans.
Yes.
Like as you're explaining this about the horse, I know that. I mean, I'd be interested in it myself personally. I mean, it's something to always look. I consider myself a student of lifelong learning, and like continually keep learning and growing and evolving. So it is something that is done primarily, or initially was for humans, but then now it's been kind of adapted.
Right. And I'm one of the few people that my practice is primarily with animals with that work. They teach people when they're learning this, like if you're going to do it with an animal, to have the person with their hand on the pet, and you're doing traditional muscle testing with their arm out on the person for the pet. But from my experience, certainly with all those cats and their people with shoulder problems, I don't really trust my person to not profoundly interfere with what is the animal's pure thought. And so I like to do the work long distance with the animal, or with the animal present. Often with a horse, I'll do it, outside of his stall. And it's really interesting as emotions are released to see the animals kind of circle and quiet and lay down and rest, and they're yawning, and you can really see the releases happening. So it's really rewarding and amazing work.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. And I know that as I'm looking at the clock, we're slowly running out of time. But this is just great. I mean, I've learned a lot talking with you. So thank you for taking the time and making the time. And I'd like to finish off with a couple last things, because I have a couple questions that I still wanted to ask you. But I'd like you to talk about. You mentioned the book, and by the way, it's cool because it's sitting back there in your backdrop.
Right there, with the little cards.
Yeah. So those cards. So first of all, where can people find out more about you if they want to purchase the book and/or the cards? Where can they find out more about you?
They can find out more about me at my website, which is Sally Morgan PT, like physical therapist, sallymorganpt.com. The book and the cards are available on Amazon. There are 2 books named Dances of the Heart, mine and a romance. So you'll know mine when you find the one that has a person riding a horse on the cover with a corgi, of course. And then the Animal Connection cards are the small version of that. And that is a collection of 52 cards, and they are all things that you can do to enrich your relationships with your animals, no matter what kind of animal you have. And I made 52 of them so that you can pull a card a week and then use the information on the card to either look up something or go find a Reiki practitioner for your animal, or do something like take a spiritual dog walk, some activities to find out what your dog's favorite treat is and then what to do with that. Making a special meal for your pet. There's a whole variety of things that you can do with your animals. And that can take a year. A lot of people have been using them in puppy training classes and having people pick a card at the end of class and then come back and report to the group the next week on whatever activity they had and what they learned. Some people at barns are doing the same thing. A group of ladies that like to ride together on Saturdays are each picking a card and reporting on it on their trail ride on Saturday. So people are using these in really fun ways.
Yeah, that's really neat. I think it's great. I think a great idea, and something that's really simple and easy, and then just gives you something so it's not so overwhelming with just you read a book. For me personally, read a book and I'm like, all these things I gotta integrate and fit in, or I wanna fit in, but I've learned to just focus on the ones that I'm most inspired to do, or use your intuition and pull a card and just trust that that's what you need to work on at that given time.
Well, and the book is arranged in pretty small chapters, because I thought a lot of people don't have time to read, but if they are going to read, it's before they go to bed at night. So each chapter is a contained little separate part of the book. There's an amazing part of the book about animals as healers working with us, my experience with dolphins in healing sessions doing cranial work. My dogs have participated in cranial sessions, and some work I did with my sister, having horses participate in craniosacral therapy sessions with us. So that's part of the interesting things that you'll find in the book.
It's very cool, and I was going to just say that about the healing session, or how animals participate, but I think that can participate in healing for humans. But A, that's in the book. B, some of that I think is going to be in your presentation with connecting with animals. Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's still lots to learn, and this is why this is so awesome, because I'm not the animal wellness expert, but I my expertise lies in building communities and connecting with people, finding people like yourself to attract and share with people that are in need of the information that you have. So I'm grateful for you and contributing to our event at the summit. You know, we're really building this community to be worldwide and continue to grow it to reach more, have more impact and reach more people around the world that need to find out more about your work. And last question I have for you, Mercedes was typing in here and said she's so happy that she was able to get on live with the call today. Said she's been wanting to do craniosacral on her dog, but has been having a hard time finding a practitioner. So how can you find out other than...
Well, that is a good question, Mercedes. It depends on where you live. I mean, I'm here in New England. I've taught plenty of classes in New England. And a lot of those people have moved, and my friend Tracy is based in Colorado, and she does wonderful work primarily with horses. And there are some people in Canada. So there is not like a website where you can look up people, but if you go to my website, I can help you try to locate someone in your area. I travel a fair amount. I work in New Jersey when I'm down there with my sister. And I teach classes worldwide. So if you want to learn the work, you can invite some people to come, and I only need about 6 participants depending on where you're located. And it's a 4-day class, and you can bring your pets to the class, and it's a really fun experience, and you will learn a protocol that you can do at the end of the 4 days. And it does not require any prior experience with body work or cranial work to be able to take that class. You're in California, I can hook you up. I have a student in Southern California, Mercedes, that would be able to work with you. So, and she's very good. She does T-Touch and other things as well. So, and also I wanted to mention I do Facebook Live nearly every day, and my Facebook page is Sally Morgan PTCST, like Craniosacral Therapy. It's PTCST, Sally Morgan.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I did see that as well. And you have nearly 400 Facebook Lives, which are also on your YouTube channel.
Yes, they're all on Conversations with a Corgi on YouTube. We also have a channel on YouTube called Corgis Can Dance, but that little bugger is hard to find. It is in the middle of all of the Conversations with a Corgi, yeah, as well as my TED Talk, which is about our connections with animals.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, Mercedes, so good on you. So she just gets better and better for her. She's in Southern California.
The woman's name is Helena Bresk, B-R-E-S-K, and she is in somewhere south of LA, near San Diego, I think.
Okay, cool. That's my favorite part of California.
Oh, it's lovely.
And so, awesome. So this has been really cool. I'm looking forward to listening and watching your presentations, you know, and that's where this year we've improved a lot with our platform, our members area or membership site that we've been using for our summit, so that if you're busy and on the go and you can't watch, you can at least listen, because we have the MP3 version. And then for those of you who are VIP, you're going to receive the video, the audio, the transcripts, the written transcript of all the presentations that are available in the members area. And so I just want to say thank you, Sally, for taking the time. It's been great to chat and connect with you. This is the first time that you and I've met. But I feel like I've known you for a long time, just because I relate to a lot of the work.
It's mutual.
Yeah, so it's really, really neat. And yeah, so again, and by the way, if you're in our members area or if you're listening to this on YouTube, we'll have the links to Sally's website and her Facebook page and YouTube page. Easy for you. But I have a feeling Mercedes is going to be reaching out to you very soon here. And any final words of wisdom, not that you haven't dropped loads of wisdom already today, but final words of wisdom that you can leave us with, and then we'll wrap things up for today.
I would say that the most important thing for us to do as lovers of animals is to reach out to them and listen to them. We hear so much about horse whispering and dog whispering, and blah, blah, but what animals want us to do is to listen to them. And just quiet your mind and your body and your human biases if you can, and just try to hear the whispers of your animal and what they are trying to tell you. And you will have a much deeper relationship with them, and you will be able to provide them with a much better quality of life and better health if you're able to hear what they're trying to tell us. And all of us have the ability to do that. And thank you so much. I am so happy that you asked me to do this, Barney, and thank you for all the work it takes to put on these summits.
Yeah, you are welcome. And yeah, I sometimes say it's a two-way street, but it's a three-way street, because you and I could get on here and talk to myself on the computer. It wouldn't be very much fun. You could get on here and talk to yourself, and it wouldn't really impact many people's lives. But then when we have like Mercedes on live and everybody else who's listening to this as a replay, it's great, because it's all plays the necessary parts. Yeah, so thank you for participating in this year's event. And it sounds like you might be interested in next year as well. And is it his name? You said was
Tristan Corgi.
The funny part is when you did the little heart thing earlier, and you did that, and it looked like when he was like leaving the screen, he was like smiling on his way
He
out.
was sliding off my hand. He was falling. He was melting. Melting Corgi.
Oh, goodness. All right, well, we're going to wrap things up for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in if you're here live. And if you're watching this as a replay, just know that unless otherwise noted, the calls are every week at 1 p.m. And again, just as a reminder, because we've got over 32 calls that have all been in this format, typically just audio only, but we're upgrading that experience to be on Facebook Live and eventually to be on Zoom as well. So if you're not a Facebook person, because there's some people that are like all anti-Facebook now because of all the stuff that's happened, but with the information getting leaked out, but they're not the only ones that's happened to. But at any rate, we're just expanding the ability for us to serve you all. And the best compliment that you can give us and Sally Morgan, I was going to say doctor, but I guess the doctor of physical therapy, right? And the best thing that you guys can do for us is just share our Facebook page, share Sally's work and her website, and just keep getting it out there, because the biggest thing that we have as a challenge is just getting the word out to more and more people. So I thank you in advance for doing so. And as I like to say, stay blessed, stay grateful, stay humble, and stay hungry. And we will see you guys on the next call. And have an amazing day no matter where you are at.